Hey guys, today I'll be showing you a build that you cannot possibly die with. And no, it doesn't involve punching enemies, I promise. This build will provide you with up to 91% damage reduction, restoration times 1, void overshields, invisibility, and a permanent 55% weapon damage boost. Not to mention all the debuffs that you will be applying to your enemies, such as Weaken, Unravel, and Jolt. I'll be showcasing this build in the Expert Nightfall, with me being 25 levels under recommended, so that's basically Grandmaster difficulty. But there's nothing that this prismatic tank of a build cannot handle. There's a lot going on in here, so you're going to have to bear with me for a minute. Our exotic Gifted Conviction is the bread and butter of this build. This exotic improves our Ascension ability by allowing it to release explosives that bounce and jolt enemies. We don't really care about this part, since Ascension is a very bad aspect for endgame content. 9 out of 10 times you will die while using it. More importantly, the second part of this exotic is what truly makes it stand out from the rest. Jolting nearby targets provides you with damage resistance. This is displayed on the left side of your screen, and it can go all the way up to ×4 resistance, which is around 40 to 50% damage reduction. This damage resistance can also be refreshed infinitely as long as you keep applying the Jolt debuff. You also have to be somewhat close to the enemies in order to get this buff, which means that we are going to be using close range arc weapons with the Volt Shot perk. I've tried Brigand's Law, the Aikilos SMG, or even Subjunctive, and even though they all handle pretty well in endgame content, there is simply one sidearm that completely outclasses them by a mile. This is everyone's favorite sidearm, Indebted Kindness, which can even roll with Lead from Gold and Volt Shot if you want to go double special weapons. This sidearm is the perfect balance between close range and long range, which means that it allows you for a flexible playstyle. For example, if enemies are far away and you need to go invisible in order to close the gap, you can get a kill with Indebted Kindness, reload your weapon, and then get another kill. Now you're invisible and ready to push. At the same time, it's so good close range because it basically one-taps red bar enemies even in Grandmasters, making you go invisible extremely quick, which is key to survival in endgame content. Also, as an added bonus, this season we have unstoppable sidearms, meaning that Indebted Kindness can deal with unstoppables and overloads at the same time, thanks to Jolt anti-artifact mod. When it comes to damage resistance, we know that our exotic Gifted Conviction provides us with 40 to 50 damage reduction. We also get 30% from Resilience, 50% from Void Overshields while they're active, and another 25 to 30% from the Galvanic Armor from the Artifact mod. Finally, we can't forget about Chest Resist mods, which if you include them, you will end up with a total of 91% damage reduction. However, realistically speaking, you are looking at 81% damage reduction because overshields are not that common. 81% is still extremely good, and it's more than you will ever need, especially when you take into account that we also have restoration ×1 ticking, which is extremely good to have since this will keep you nice and healthy. The way that we are going to be proccing restoration ×1 is by picking up an Orb of Power thanks to the fragment Facet of Purpose, which is probably the best fragment in the entire game for Prismatic, and you will see it being used in every single build. All of this combined with infinite invisibility that we get from Stylus Executioner and the decoys from Thirded Spectre, this build becomes an absolute land tank capable of surviving anything while ditching out a very good amount of damage. Speaking about damage, we are going to be proccing Radiant by picking up Orbs of Power and hitting enemies with our melee ability. This is a 25% weapon damage boost. We also have weapon surges on our boots, and that is another 20 to 24%. So overall, we have a very easy 50 to 55% damage weapon boost as soon as we pick up an Orb of Power. This weapon damage boost is going to make our Indebted Kindness hit even harder. Now that you fully understand how this build works, let me explain the aspects, fragments and mods that we'll be using with this build. Stat-wise, you want to prioritize resilience, followed by discipline and mobility. In the artifact, it's very important that you're running galvanic armor, radiant orbs, and void hegemony. Ability-wise, we are using golden gun, that way we can get restoration from our facet of purpose. For our melee ability, I am using snare bomb so you can get the overshields from the artifact mod, and so you can also apply the weaken effect. At the end of the day, you can use whatever melee and grenade that you want with this build. These two are simply my favorite ones. For your aspect, we are going to be using Stylus Executioner with Threaded Spectre. This combo is gonna make sure that you do not die close range, even in Grandmasters. Fragment wise, we are using Facet of Hope. This will speed up your dodge recharge rate, that way you can spam your Threaded Spectre more often. Facet of Purpose is going to provide us with restoration whenever we pick up an Orb of Power. Facet of Balance is going to provide us with melee and grenade energy. Facet of Dawn is going to provide us with the Radiant buff whenever we hit an enemy with our melee ability. If you and your teammates are making a ton of Orbs of Power, then feel free to switch this one out. Finally, we are using Facet of Awakening. This is going to spawn those Ionic Traces, which are not only going to provide us with more armor charges, but this is also going to provide you with ability energy, so you can spam all three of your abilities more often. Mod-wise, on our helmet, we are using an Arc Siphon to create Orbs of Power, Heavy Ammo Finder to generate some heavy ammo, and then a Special Ammo Finder if you're going double special weapons. If not, then go for a Heavy Ammo Scout. On our gauntlets, we are using Arc Loader to make sure that we reload our arc weapons faster. We combine this with Focusing Strike and Bolstering Detonation so we can get our class ability back even more often. On our chestplate, you simply run a triple resist mod to maximize survival. On our boots, we are using Elemental Charge, that way we can get armor charges from Ionic Traces, followed by double arc weapon surges so we can increase the damage that we deal with our arc weapons. Finally, on our cloak, we are using Time Dilation to extend our weapon surges, as well as our Font of Restoration, which provides us with 3 tiers of recovery. Finally, we are using Reaper, that way we can create an Orb of Power after using our dot ability. Weapon-wise, our most important weapon is Indebted Kindness. You want to have this with Volt Shot and any other perk, ideally Lead from Gold or Impulse Amplifier. You can also use any of the craftable arc weapons such as Brigand's Law, Subjunctive and Aikilo's SMG. Now I've tried them out and they're also very nice with this build. Lastly, another good choice is Undercurrent with Volt Shot if you're doing easier content and if you need more ad clear. When it comes to our kinetic slot, this build is extremely flexible. You can literally use any weapon that you want. I like to pair this up with Arbalest or Wish Ender because this season there's so many enemies surrounded by barriers and these two weapons can easily pierce them. Now I also like to use shotguns, that way I have even more damage close range. Heritage is nice at melting beefier enemies when you get close to them. You can also use sniper rifles if you want to stick longer range, or even blinding grenades and Edge's Scepter if you want that extra ad clear. Seriously, in the kinetic slot you can use whatever weapon that you want, and this is one of the nice advantages of this build. Finally, for our power weapon, I like to use a Wendigo with Explosive Light and Auto Loading, because when I have Radiant, Weapon Surges and Explosive Light procced, I literally melt champions even in Grandmasters. Once again, you can also use something like Hothead or even Song of Your Youth, and at the same time you don't have to stick to arc weapons if you don't want to, so if you prefer using a solar weapon, go ahead and use that instead. The way you want to play this build is by going quite aggressive, and an easy way to close the gap between you and your enemies is to get a kill with Indebted Kindness, then you reload your weapon and then get another kill. This will proc Volt Shot on the enemy and make you go invisible after killing them. Once invisible, you can start pushing forward and playing more aggressive. Remember to reload your weapon after each kill to keep on proccing Volt Shot. Another way to close the gap is by using your grapple melee, which will actually turn you invisible after getting a kill on an enemy. If you're surrounded by too many enemies, you can always dodge before coming out of invis in order to spawn the Threaded Spectre clone, which will aggro all the enemies, making it much safer to start stacking up your Gifted Conviction. But even if there's not that many enemies, you should try spamming your dodge in order to proc Reaper and make more orbs of power. On that note, also try to get double kills, that way you can use your Arc Siphon for even more orbs of power, which would provide you with a ton of beneficial buffs such as restoration and weapon surges. Since you're going to be dodging a bunch, don't be afraid to spam your melee in order to weaken any target or even go invisible, since it also counts towards Stylus Executioner. I love weakening champions and then bursting them down with my heavy weapon. Lastly, remember that you have your golden gun, which you should be using on any tougher enemy as soon as you see one. And that is all for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this build, and huge shout out to my Patreon members. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day.